Hello everyone and welcome to ZamaTree's live webinar today on custom manufacturing for aerospace and defense. We're going to go ahead and get started as people continue to roll in. First, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Serena and I'm on the marketing team here at ZamaTree. Here are a couple of quick notes before we get started. Please submit questions in the question box throughout the webinar. We will answer them at the end. Greg and Mark really love questions, so please continue to submit them when you think of them. And after the webinar, we'll send you a recording for you to rewatch or share with your colleagues. And stick around until the end for a special discount code for all of our attendees. Next, I want to introduce our first presenter, Greg Paulson. Greg is our Director of Application Engineering here at ZamaTree. He has spent over a decade working with engineers on custom manufacturing projects, including CNC machining, additive manufacturing, sheet metal fabrication, urethane casting, and injection molding. Prior to ZamaTree, Greg worked in product development with a focus on ruggedized electromechanical systems. Next, I'd like to introduce our other presenter, Mark Gallagher. Mark is ZamaTree's Senior Manager of Operations and recently pioneered a ZamaTree office on the West Coast. He is focused on supporting aerospace and defense clients and will have all of our expertise on specific applications. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Greg to get started. And don't forget to submit your questions throughout the webinar.
All right, awesome. Hey, Serena, thank you so much for setting up this webinar. It's a very important topic for Mark and I, which is making parts, custom manufactured parts for the aerospace and defense world. There's definitely more requirements that we see, a lot more complicated drawings, and usually higher spec manufacturing. So that's what this webinar is about, is talking about how to not only understand what ZamaTree can do, but how we can help make sure that your projects are to success, to spec, and on time. As Serena noted, I've worked in electrical mechanical systems, housing assemblies. Actually, it's kind of interesting. I have more of a defense lean because when I started working on that, I was on, basically warfighter systems, ruggedized military products. Mark Gallagher from our team here has essentially been groomed within ZamaTree and built up quite a repertoire working with aerospace clients, space flight work, and just really understanding the needs of that marketplace. So I think you have some really great folks. Mark is a just tremendous asset here at ZamaTree to talk to. Questions, please, as you work through, write them up. We love the Q&A session, and sometimes you get even more nuggets of information from that. So today, I'm going to start off with talking about ZamaTree. For those of you who are not familiar with ZamaTree as a platform, going over a live demo of our site and kind of showing you some of the resources that we have. We're going to talk about some of the current challenges that you may be facing when trying to procure custom manufactured components for both the aerospace and defense marketplace. Talking about what ZamaTree can do and where our sweet spot really is for this marketplace. Mark will be going over some example projects. Unique thing about this is most projects we can't share what we do. So Mark actually did a really great job on building examples to show you some of the work that we've done before, like our work that we're able to do here. And I'm going to finish off with some general tips, talking about the digital thread for manufacturing, especially what ZamaTree utilizes here, about CAD tolerance and inspection. And we'll open up the Q&A at the end. So ZamaTree is this platform for procuring custom manufactured parts. We make it very easy by becoming a single interface right now for 11 manufacturing technologies and counting. All it takes is a 3D CAD file to get started, and we actually will interpret and instantly price that CAD file right on our website. So pricing lead time happens near instantaneously, and I'll show you that in just a second here with a live demo. So that whole RFQ process you may be used to, it being multiple days or even multiple weeks of back and forth with your supplier, it happens instantaneously. And that's because we're driving this machine learning, this really powerful AI interface to look at your part and interpret its needs. The buying checkout experience is e-commerce. So all of a sudden we've taken custom manufacturing and turned it into almost like an Amazon.com checkout system. So it's automated, it gives you the best quality and lead times for our parts. From our fulfillment side, we have a manufacturing partner network of over 3,000 shops. These are machine shops, 3D printing bureaus, sheet metal fabricators, and even the finishing network as well within the US that we can actually build from. So we're actually able to pair the needs of your specific job, so the requirements that the part needs to be most successful, with those who can most successfully complete those parts. So it's not just a kind of a local to local mentality where there's some sweet spots, and there's also some spots where it may be outside of the comfort zone for that manufacturer. We're able to actually look at the project specifics and match that specifically those who can do the work the best, and usually for better value for you as a customer. So our platform, I mentioned it is AI powered, provides instant quoting, that manufacturability feedback, dynamic pricing and lead times. And again, that's the guarantee. So like this platform basically sets up the contract for the scope of work that you're making. And we'll lead into that further as well, especially when Mark starts going into his examples here. So let me just go to our site really quick and show you what we're working with. So this is ZamaTree.com. So ZamaTree with the X here, kind of like think Xerox as far as how we say it. And we offer, again, multiple technologies from machining, 3D printing, sheet metal. We do 3D printing in both plastics and metals, like direct metal sintering here, urethane casting, injection molding. You can learn about what we do by going to our resources page. If you are interested in a certain material or process, I highly recommend checking out some of our resources like our design guides that we have, learning about our manufacturing standards, and even seeing stuff like photos of different materials. Check out our resources page for this. But what I really want to show you on this live demo is the quote. So I'm going to click Get a Quote right now. You know what they say about live demos, right? So don't do live demos. But here we are anyways. So this is our online quoting site. We accept most major file types. I'll make this a little bit bigger for everybody here. So if you are working on solid part, or SolidWorks, you can take a direct solid part uploader here. If you're working in Inventor, you take your IPT, Creo, Siemens products. We take the native CAD, including actually SolidWorks and Inventor. We actually do have an add-in where you can do the same mechanisms I'm going to show you here right within these add-ins. I'm going to go ahead and take a file that we have that I already have up here on our site. But the only difference between these files that I have up here on the site and these and you uploading is just the upload time. So as soon as I put this up, all these things are happening at once in the background, and instantly your price and lead time shows. So that was it. With that couple seconds there is all it takes to actually price out and provide lead times. What defaults on our site is going to be the cheapest option. So in this case, it's $32. It's encompassing this part, which is about 7 inches by 3.5 by about 1/2 inch here. It's looking at 3D printed nylon 12. So this is our SLS, selective laser sintering nylon. We could go and check out right here if I'm just doing a prototype and doing a fit check and just need to get a mock-up and get on with my life. A perfect prototype material to choose from. But I could go even further to specify my part. So if I go click on modify part here, this will bring up a modal that we could go and choose from our other processes, our other material selections, change our finishes, and so forth. So I'm going to go work through while this is going on here. So I'm going to go and choose, for example, CNC machining. Let's go ahead and make this part out of 6061. I told you guys about my live demo section here. I was running into internet issues right before this. All right, there we go. All right, so update. So the price updated automatically for this part here. I'm going to save properties really quick, kind of show you what this looks like on our site. But I can now take a look at this and see that this price is updated for, again, this large complex panel being priced out in CNC machining just as quickly as it prices out for 3D printing. I could change my quantities here, move it through, and you'll see the updates again. Update live on our site, and instantly spit out different prices for different economies of scale. So instead of please quote quantity 1, 5, 10, 25, etc., you could actually just go and put in a specific number. So if I need to make 12 of these, I can make 12 of these. Again, bear with me here because yeah, there we go. So we have this. So we have this here. The price has changed to that quantity price, 12 price at 3,000 here. With again, it's scaled from 1,000 for basically all these setups that you're doing to about $250 each. So you can see how this price changes specifically here. This part also has a drawing, and I can further configure this, and I'll show you this once we get back to the presentation on things like adding threads, tapped holes, specific tolerances, inspection requirements. We could do all that within our website. Even things like adding certifications. ITAR is a checkbox away, COCs are a checkbox away, hardware traceability, so say you have inserts or pins that you need a hardware cert for, we could definitely do that. Material certs, if you're working on domestic or DFAR, we can handle that, again, within that certifications tab in the upper left. So let's go back to the presentation here. And again, that was our platform. All that pricing, all those lead times, that's AI powered, and it's actually based off the manufacturing feedback that comes from our network. So this is actually a real market value for parts there. It's not just looking at where it's located. And again, it's not that local. It's actually looking at it from this domestic marketplace. What's the best value for this part? So we offer CNC machining, again, sheet metal, plastic 3D printing, metal 3D printing, urethane casting, and injection molding. So let's talk about what makes this challenging. So for the most part, if you're prototyping, you're building your part out, you have a, you can probably just click and go. If you're just trying to get a milled part, if you're trying to get a, a 3D print, something that's fit check, it's usually a click, select your quantity, go, and move on with your life. But for sourcing custom parts for aerospace and defense, it's usually not just the material, right? It's more to that. So it's usually things like tight tolerance, multiple finishes. So a very common thing for me to do is say do a chem film on an aluminum machine part, and then do a secondary process like an anodize, like a black anodize or hard coat anodize to this. You can add things like part marking. So does this need silk screening? Silk screening doesn't need laser marking, engraving. Is it stamp? Is it bag and tag? Do you have assemblies here? So is it a minor assembly, like just me putting some helicoils in, or key locking inserts, or maybe some pins if it's a sheet metal part? Or are you actually looking at multiple custom parts being made, and from your bill of material side, you just want to receive one part that's already assembled? So this is something that we see often, specifically in this industry. Export's huge. Like I said, we have the easy button for ITAR and DFAR parts. It's one checkbox away, and all of a sudden it moves our entire security and supply chain to this ITAR network, and it makes it very, very easy for you to get on-demand parts just as quickly as other parts you procure, but now within ITAR and within the compliances needed for that. You're always looking for COCs. Again, those hardwares, material certs, and even like the materials that seem common may have a different temper or spec to it. So something that we may be thinking is coming out from a extrusion, you may have a spec that calls out from a different form of making that stock, and something that we can definitely address for you. The other challenges sometimes are on that sourcing procurement side. So approved suppliers, like getting stuff as approved supplier, whether it's from the direct manufacturing or from the finishing. Something that we can accommodate here, and Xometry is very good at, is being that one supplier, multiple technologies, huge network. So we're able to really become that one supplier for a multitude of offers, consolidating a supply chain. And then, of course, lead time, right? So everything that we're asking for the world out of these parts because we need it. We need this to be applied to our project, and it was needed yesterday. And that's, again, where Xometry adds its value by pairing what is needed from that part with that manufacturer who's best able to complete it with our quality assurance behind it. We're able to get faster lead times and better pricing. So where do we fall into play? Where do we see a lot of work coming through on the aerospace and defense marketplace? It's usually that niche between I am in the engineering R&D phase, like highly iterative product development cycle, to bringing those requirements up to a fly component. So we're usually able to see similar iterations of parts and see essentially not only the geometry change, but often the specs grow. So at first it may be a part that ultimately could be a titanium milled part with different finishes to it, but it may originally be milled out of 6061 or something for some component testing and something that brings you up to kind of a lower mid fidelity model. And before we move to the much higher priced exotic materials and specifications behind it. So we often see that kind of pragmatic approach of prototype to production, but again with added specs in between here. The other wonderful thing about us is we're actually people behind this. So again, Mark and I, we come with experience in the aerospace defense market. We have machinists on staff that are often 30 plus years experienced, sheet metal specialists, molding specialists, casting specialists. And when you look at our teams, the teams here at ZamaTree, we're very good at reviewing special needs for these types of projects and making sure that the quote is set up in a way in which it reflects all your needs. Even from our sales side, our sales team is trained and well adept at working with file transfer systems if needed. So we also know that a lot of our clients may not even be able to send a file traditional way, and sometimes we'll need to share through a file transfer protocol, which we're able to accommodate for you. We have dedicated staff members for all of our customers, so you have a dedicated point of contact when you join on ZamaTree and do a free sign-on and start quoting your parts. And again, those are points of contacts will help you set up any custom quotes that are beyond just the auto quoting aspect. So other things, when it comes down to it, bringing up to your quality assurance team here, this is why you want ZamaTree as an approved supplier. It's AS9100, ISO 9001 certified. We're ITAR registered, including our ITAR network. We're able to accept POs as a form of payment. So just as easy as you do that e-commerce checkout, you can actually use a PO as a form of payment once we approve and set up credit apps with you. So it's very, very smooth from a procurement process. We can manage larger production orders that may require standard delivery time. So, periodic deliveries of a larger quantity of parts. Blanket purchase orders are not a problem for us. And we have that elastic capacity, whether it is a one-off, we do not require a minimum quantity. You can order one or you can order 1,000, and we're just as happy with that. Because of all the processes, we can scale with you, like I mentioned, as we work between that R&D and that kind of in-flight component there. So because of automation on our website, the last thing you'll notice about Mark, if you have interacted with him, it's all about customer service too. Like, everything, now that we can focus on just the scope of your project, we can really focus on that service aspect. So that's a mouthful about the challenge cases that we see in aerospace defense, and especially why you have application engineers, why you have program managers like Mark on board. And Mark, I wanted to pass the presentation over to you to kind of talk about some applications.
Sure. Thanks, Greg. So like was mentioned in the introduction, my name is Mark Gallagher. I am the Senior Manager of Operations at ZamaTree. And really what that means is I have the fortune to work with both sides of ZamaTree. So I work really closely with our different aerospace and defense customers, and I also work really closely with our manufacturing partner network to help our manufacturers develop their capabilities and onboard new manufacturing processes so that they can just take on more work from the ZamaTree platform. So like I said, I get to work with a lot of our different customers, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to show you what kind of things come through the ZamaTree platform. I mean, it's really easy to get a demo of how our quoting site works, but it's a whole different experience to know what we're comfortable manufacturing. So I'm going to go through a few different examples that show the type of parts that are really common in aerospace and defense manufacturing, and we can talk about why the ZamaTree platform is a good fit for them. So this first example is basically manufacturing tooling. So this would be something that would be on the assembly floor of our different aerospace and defense customers. And this is also an example of something Xometry is really, really good at, building the tools that help you build your products. So this, for example, is a large machine 6061 assembly and vacuum fixture. It has probably a few different machine Delrin or acetyl components for wear, and then there's a few off-the-shelf components that are assembled onto it as well. So the nice thing about Xometry, and we haven't really touched on it that much yet, is we can also support you with simple mechanical assembly like this. You know, if you had these, normally you might be used to going to a machine shop and just getting the 6061 parts machined in one place, and maybe there's some stainless parts that you have to send to a different place, and maybe once you get the parts back you have to send them out for anodizing. We can really be a one-stop shop, and we can even do the final assembly for you, so when this hits your dock, it's ready to use. In the case where you have simple assemblies, you just need to get a kind of a human in the loop to take a look at your quote, and we can put together some manual pricing for you. So this is just one example. We build tools like this all the time. It's one of our niches. It's one thing that Xometry is really, really good at. So the next example we can go to, this is something I see really often as well. This is just kind of like an enclosure for some sensors, like in this case, a camera. We see this all the time in supporting ground support equipment, or maybe you're doing things on a test stand and you need kind of a hardened camera system. We can make enclosures like this all the time, and you know, this enclosure has a few different machined aluminum components. Maybe it has a laser cut polycarbonate lens to protect the camera lens. We could even do simple assembly where we put the O-ring in there for you and deliver it as a completed assembly. And similar to what I mentioned before, you know, you could tell us that you want these parts to be machined from 6061, you want them to be hard code anodized, you want them to be laser marked with a part number, maybe you want some helicoils or key locking inserts installed into the threads, and then you want, you know, a full AS9100 dimensional inspection report on them as well. Those are all different things you can configure right through the quoting site, and then when you get the parts from Xometry, you know they'll meet all your requirements. They'll include all the proper documentation that you need, like material certs and the inspection report and finish certs and everything like that. So these, and like I said, these examples, you know, these are just indicative of the type of work that comes through the Xometry platform very often.
Yeah, and Mark, I was going to say on this, you know, a lot of times a camera enclosure, if the assembly is fairly simple, it's usually a lot of times this is a click and go style project with our site where we do the supply chain for you, where you have again different manufacturing processes, different finishing needs to this, and we can essentially get you those discrete mechanical parts in a box, you know, so you can go assemble them and put your integrations with it. When we see something like this, the first example here, that's much more of a contact your rep work through, because again, usually you have someone that's on your receiving line who is looking for a Xometry package with one line item, maybe multiples of them, but one line item, which is that integration of all those materials together. So it also depends on how you have set up that purchase, set up for purchasing and receiving at your supply as well.
Absolutely. So this next example, this is something we see really often as well. This is, you know, a vibration test fixture. Maybe you're building a satellite, or you have some ruggedized components that are going to be exposed to a lot of high frequency or low frequency vibration during regular use. We can we very, very often manufacture these test fixtures. Normally, you know, they're a lightweight stiff material like 7050 aluminum or sometimes magnesium alloys. Generally, there's a lot of GD&T callouts in terms of mounting hole locations and things like that. And all of those different tolerance requirements can be dictated directly on the auto quoting site. And then the really nice thing is we're also happy to have a human in the loop. So maybe you build this quote, you configure it to account for all of your tolerances, and you say, you know, I'm not really sure that I've captured everything properly, or I want to make sure that that Xometry can hold certain tolerances. Then we're always happy for you to reach out to someone like myself or the different applications engineers on our quoting team, and we can review the quote. We can add any specific notes to capture all of the nuance associated with manufacturing to aerospace and defense requirements. So this part, for example, if you said that all of those hole locations on the kind of the base platform have to have pretty close true hole position tolerances because you're going to be mounting to something that is also held to very tight tolerances, then you can tell us you want a CMM inspection just to beep out those holes and make sure that they're in spec.
Yeah, it's really important to note, too, that these major inspection methods like CMM are, again, a checkbox away. It's something that's available actually on the AutoQuotes part of the site.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can, through the quoting site, you can really choose the destiny of your part. You can really set basically the qualification level of the part. If you're just looking for something through that's a prototype, it's just going to end up on an engineer's desk. You can kind of strip down how the quote is configured so that it doesn't need material certs, it doesn't need full final inspection, you don't need COCs, and what you'll see is, the lead time is going to be really short, the price is going to be a little bit less expensive, and then at the same time, you can configure your quote to, basically if you need a flight component with full traceability, full process certifications, full AS9100 inspection, you can also configure the quote to meet those requirements. And at the same time, we understand that it's not always the most comfortable experience, ordering flight hardware or hardware with very specific requirements without interacting with a human. So we are always very happy to look over your quotes for you, especially when supporting aerospace and defense customers. So this next example is just a really good example of the benefits of using ZamaTree sheet metal capabilities. So we build sheet metal components for maybe gauge clusters on testing equipment or equipment shields, machine shields, large brackets and things like that. We build those all the time in sheet metal. It's a really great low-cost option to get the geometry you need manufactured. We can install all of the typical sheet metal hardware like PEM nuts, PEM fasteners, standoffs. You can configure your quote online with powder coating finish, or really commonly we see sheet metal parts that need silk screening or ink stamping for different logos or button identification. So this is another really great example of a part that can go right through the ZamaTree platform without too much interaction. But that's all I have. Anything you want to add on this, Greg?
That's it for me. I mean, I think one of the things about sheet metal is, as Mark mentioned, we like angular bends. So those are going to be the cheapest way to achieve your goals. Something to note that when you are tolerancing for this is feature to feature. As far as, say, for example, I have like usually these D-shaped holes for these type of buttons on the side here. The square cutouts. Typically, feature to feature is going to be laser cut, so it's going to give you that tighter tolerance, about 5/1000 or so for sheet metal. But this design is good here. We're showing that slots are being used on these features, and essentially, once you move out to bends do add some wiggle to tolerance. So just understand when you're tolerancing for sheet metal that you feature to feature is one process, right? I'm laser cutting. Edge to feature is a different process because I may be blanking in a different way here, and then bend to feature there again has its own tolerances. So there's little nuances to that. And this is my awesome plug for our sheet metal webinar that we just did last month, which is on demand on ZamaTree's YouTube channel as well. But that was really good and really informative if you are looking to learn more about sheet metal and sheet metal design.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to add is ZamaTree has spent a lot of time putting together design guides for the different manufacturing processes we offer. So those are right on the homepage. You can look at our resources site, and we have a lot of different design guides which are tailored to the different manufacturing process. So we have design guides for the different additive manufacturing processes we offer, design guides for sheet metal, design guides for CNC machining. And those design guides will give you a good idea of what to account for when you're designing parts. What are the expected tolerances? What are the expected surface roughnesses? What kind of post-processing you can do? So I would really recommend, if you're designing a part and maybe you don't have a lot of experience designing sheet metal parts, then you can look at our design guides to help out.
Absolutely. We always no one knows like 11 processes back and forth. So that's why we have these guides to make sure that you can enter safely into a different manufacturing process and even better utilize it to better your needs, because there's some really cool things you can do, especially with additive or moving to different processes in regards to geometries you can achieve, or even scalability from one manufacturing to another.
Yep, absolutely.
ISOGrid.
So yeah, ISO grids are my favorite. I don't know why. I just love them. So, we also build a lot of different air structure components, and you'll very often see lightweighting techniques like ISO grids or just different pocketing techniques on parts. This is the type of thing that ZamaTree can do all day. And the nice thing is we can also help you kind of optimize the design for manufacturability. So, you don't really want sharp corners in parts like this, so we can help tell you what kind of tooling would be best suited. Maybe you have a square end mill, but it's got a small corner radius. So now in each of those pockets, instead of needing to surface them, we can say we can use this tool. It'll simplify and remove an extra tool change, and we can keep your price down. So that's the kind of thing that as you're designing parts or as you're looking to have parts manufactured, always feel free to reach out to us, and we can give you some design input on that. For large components like this, the really nice thing about the ZamaTree platform, I mean, I know you don't have a sense of scale on this. This thing could be a millimeter long, or it could be, a meter long, but imagine that this is a relatively large part. The ZamaTree manufacturing platform, we have so many different machine shops and so many different fabrication facilities in our network that we have a very, very wide range of capabilities. So we have machine shops that are focused on, it's not the focus of this webinar, but small Swiss turn medical device components. And we also have machine shops that have huge machines, huge gantry routers that make parts like this all day. So on something like this, there'd probably be a lot of heel coils for mounting locations, and you'd want a CMM inspection to make sure that the profile of all of those, pocket geometry is correct. And this is the type of thing that ZamaTree can do all day, and we have a lot of experience with.
That's awesome, and yeah, as Mark said, those panels, I mean, they are tough to do, and that's what the power of the diversity of network really is being able to make sure that that specific need is not at every machine shop type project. It really isn't. You need to have the right platform, typically making a vacuum fixture or something to hold it still. Even the CAM program that you're using is really important when you talk about building multi-pocketed items like that. The material that you buy is very important, because I've seen parts like that be pocketed in a way where it folded up like a potato chip, and then you learn to do it right afterwards. So there's different things you need to consider, and we have the expertise especially to take care of that.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to be talking a little bit on the digital thread again, and this is really important when it comes from more modern manufacturing technologies. So as you saw on ZamaTree's website, you're uploading that 3D model to start. That's everything our AI is driving into, is interpreting that 3D model. From there, you could select your accoutrements, right? So the threads, tapped holes, the surface finish, is a hard coat, is a nickel plate. You could choose part markings. Is this going to be bag and tag and silk screened? Do you need engravings to it? And even things like inspection criteria, the certifications, all that can be selected, but it really starts off with that 3D model. So I want to spend some time focusing on how to prep your CAD and drawings to success. The powerful network that we have is also, in a lot of ways, almost kind of making sure that you set the CAD up right, because, how do I say this? Not if you're by a machine shop and you say, hey, that's a critical edge, it's one thing. But if you are trying to communicate that without actually being there, you need to make sure that you're modeling, for example, to the nominal of your dimensions in your CAD. So that I'd rather actually be creating my tool path for that targeted edge that's right in the middle of your dimensions than, say, if you had a dimension where I actually modeled to an extreme edge, and one little nick can take me a thou or two out of tolerance. It can lead to some bad news and some reworks in RMAs that we don't necessarily want to do. Usually we scrap the part and we restart there. So by modeling your CAD, making sure that's matching the drawing, making sure that the CAD is actually modeled in a way that's nominal to the tolerances that are needed, and using things like proper GD&T especially for arrayed features and features that mate together in a more complex assembly, it will go so far in making sure that the product that you're asking for is made exactly how you need it. My goal is for you to be able to take that project out of the box that we ship to you in, or crates for some of these large parts, right? And you could install it right into your apparatus. And that really comes down to first that's kind of the garbage in, garbage out mentality, that you're prepping your CAD right, prepping the drawing right, setting up that quote for success, and that quote becomes the love letter to our manufacturers to make that part and inspect it correctly. So when we talk about things like best practices, again, some things to know that hole wizards really do help reduce some of that guesswork on nominals. If you do need to work on a drill hole from basically CADing and extrude through, just make sure to make it the minimum size. I can always make a hole bigger. It's very hard to make a hole smaller unless I'm changing it, putting an insert or something like that, which, again, if not spec, we don't necessarily want to do. Model-based definition, we're getting more excited about MBD and PMI into our CAD programs. Some of our add-ins, like our SolidWorks add-in and our Inventor add-in, actually can start to take some data of that model and interpret it into helping the quote. And what it's really doing is pre-selecting some checkboxes because it noticed these tapped holes or noticed this material you chose. So you can always override that as well. But just understand that when it comes from that digital thread of here's your part, here's an upload to our site, and here's it to our manufacturer. Understand our manufacturers may be reading a step file or some other file type that is not the native because they may be used to putting it up to our CAM program. So if all your work is in model-based definition, we still really would like that drawing for reference on anything that is, threaded tapped holes, tight tolerances, or other critical features that are not, general standard to that process. In the future, I hope 5 years from now, everything's model-based and my life is beautiful. It's just click, drag, upload, everything auto-fills there. The other thing is when you are making your drawing, we want to make sure that what we're keeping our eyes on is the most critical dimensions. All processes have general tolerances to them. So if a dimension's plus or minus 5, we can follow the CAD model, and actually mill out that feature and probably stay within spec. If it's critical to function and needs to be measured, definitely show it up there. But we want to make sure that what our eyes are being drawn to on the drawing and kind of decluttering all the dimensions on the drawing are the ones that are critical. Those are usually the ones that are a tighter dimension than our standard tolerances, or again, like those critical to measure, 100% inspection required dimensions there. The title block can cover a lot of this. So, that plus or minus 5 thousandths for 3 decimal places, all that will go a very long way. And again, please make sure that your CAD and drawing match. CAD is king now. So drawings are there to help guide us to the final inspection and everything, but understand that CAD is king because CAM is reading a 3D CAD model. CAM's not taking a look at the drawing, right? So we want to make sure that that digital thread, again, that digital file that's been created on a digital program, uploaded to our site, actually accepted by our manufacturing partners on the partner network as a digital file into their CAM program. The first time it matches physical reality is when it's on the machine there. So we want to make sure that digital thread is really strong in the backbone of this entire process. Go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
Can I just add two things back on your last slide, Greg?
Yep.
So the first thing that I just want to add is when you do have a drawing and you're using the title block tolerances to simplify things, make sure that the tolerances in the title block match the manufacturing process that you're laying out on that drawing. So if you have a sheet metal part they're using on a drawing template for CNC machine parts, and all of a sudden the title block has plus or minus 5 thou tolerances on 3 place decimals, then it's, if we go and quote that, we're going to have to quote that to hold the tolerances on the drawing block, and your price is going to go up. So I would just be cautious of that. Make sure the title block and the drawing format you're using match the requirements associated with the manufacturing process you're looking to use. And then the other thing is just, and I apologize if you're going to touch on this later, Greg, but this is actually just best practices for using ZamaTree's quoting site. So one of the things that I see very often from aerospace customers is during the prototyping stage, maybe you're looking to use a different material like a flight component might be 70/50, but a prototype component is 60/61 to keep the cost down, or you want parts less any finishing, or you don't care about hitting some of the tighter tolerances. You can order those through the quoting site, but what happens after an order is placed on the ZamaTree site is the order goes through manufacturability review. And if our team sees discrepancies between what is called out on the drawing and what was configured on your quote, we're generally going to put the order on hold and reach out to you. So in those type of situations, what I recommend you do is add in the notes something like 60/61 acceptable in place of 70/50, or ignore all finish notes or something like that, just to make sure that the order keeps going through the manufacturing process without any hiccups or delays or anything like that.
Yeah, we see the same thing when eventually you're gonna order that in the final material, but you may be prototyping, like say even like a 3D printing method. Sometimes it's like drawing for reference only, or something, or just a little note that you can write into. We have a free-form notes, essentially notes box on the quote side, and that'll go a very long way to make sure that your process goes smoothly once you check out the part there. No, that's a really great point, and we definitely see that all the time because it is a lot cheaper for us to mill something, in 60/61 for you, and a lot quicker as well than say titanium when you may not even be on the final revision, and this part doesn't necessarily need to be titanium for this level of validation. So it's very cool to be able to just kind of click drag and go to a different, more economical option if you can. The other things I was going to show is on our website. Again, you can do things like specify your tight tolerances. This is my my 4-step process for specifying, because I want to point out that our goal is to get enough information to give you an accurate price. And so versus you putting your entire every single dimension in and us going down for the exact like 92 dimensions that you may have on this drawing, we'd actually have a more simplified way of looking at tolerances and also getting the correct price for these parts. So after you upload your file, once you go click on that modify part modal in our website, when you scroll down, you'll see tolerances for certain processes that you can select tighter tolerances, like CNC machining and sheet metal, for instance. And you can select the tightest tolerance that is on your drawing. So a good example is like, say you have over your drawing, you have maybe 6 tolerances that are tighter than plus or minus 5. If the tightest tolerance is 1/1000, you want to select that tightest tolerance of 1/1000, and then take all those dimensions, just count them up. So anything that's under that 5,000. So like I said, if it's 6, you just put that quantity 6, and it'll automatically update your price to a fair market value for that type of selection. Everything else is going to say, all right, now time to upload your drawing, because we're definitely going to want to take a look at this drawing. The manufacturer will as well, to make sure what's critical for you. So this upload, select, count, attach is all about making sure that you are giving enough information that we can give you an accurate price, and that you're attaching that drawing so that our manufacturer can make sure that we're hitting those critical values for you beyond just the general tolerances. It's a little confusing, but I can tell you that 2 checkboxes is a lot better than add tolerance here, type it in, add tolerance here, type it in. So we are doing this to balance out kind of like the user experience and the speed to quote versus the highly defined quote side, and it's worked pretty well for us. And again, we are people that know how to read drawings, so we are very happy when you upload your drawing if you do have a reference drawing. For prototypes and things that don't have tight tolerances, we don't need drawings, so we can go straight off of CAD for that. The other thing to note too is like inspection methods matter. We have the next slide I'm going to go down are different inspection methods, but understand that certain things are going to flag an elevated inspection requirement. So you can't always choose like to not get a report like a standard inspection, but even if you choose something like a standard inspection plus report where you'll be delivered a report with the part, understand that if you have something like a surface profile, or say you have several arrayed parts with a true position call out, that may require a CMM to inspect appropriately. Or say you do have dimensions that are even sometimes like tighter than a thou, we would probably require a CMM to appropriately check that off and say accepted without saying a best effort call out to it. So understand that if you have true position concentricity, any type of profile, GD&T, very likely you may want to look into a CMM inspection versus just a standard hand tool measurement inspection, because that's going to get you that's going to actually be able to physically measure the dimensions that you're trying to measure. So we have different options. If you choose, this is a CNC machine options for our inspection list here. It's a little bit of a busy slide, and again, you can see this directly on the website and click through and learn more about these. You can have much more detailed information on this link here for our inspections, our inspection sampling plans, and our FAQs. But just in general, if your part is default for machining, it's going to be a standard inspection. That basically means we're doing our in-process inspections, we're doing an internal review, but our documents are for internal use, and you're not going to receive an inspection report. If you do require one, you would select the second one, which is the formal inspection with dimension report. It is we are going to be giving you a QC report with 100% dimensional inspection, following statistical sampling. So if you are doing this in like a larger batch order, we'll move to a statistical sampling plan after a certain amount there. CMM, like I mentioned, so if you have surface profile, or say you have over 100 dimensions, even if they're linear dimensions, it may be worth us setting up a CMM program and doing that to get the dimensions that you're looking for, and we're going to actually balloon your drawing and get you a CMM report out of that. This is also a terrific option when you think about moving towards a semi-production environment where we are going to be repeating the work and making sure that you get a consistent report back to take a look at all our dimensions and true digital readout. Mark, actually, if you want to go into these other two, and then I could talk about custom a little bit, but I think this is your cup of tea here. So we have our AS9100 option as well as source inspection, which is very interesting in itself there. But yeah, do you want to go over the first article inspection for AS9100?
Sure. So the AS9100 format is just a specific inspection document template that we use for aerospace customers that gives traceability on the actual inspection equipment used, calibration equipment. It's just a really standard format that a lot of aerospace companies require. So we went ahead and added it as a selectable option on the quoting site. So if you need an AS9100 format, sometimes ZamaTree has a standard inspection template that we use that doesn't have all of the calibration requirements of the AS9100 template. So if our standard template won't work, you can feel free to select that. The other option is source inspection. Source inspection is a customer on-site inspection of the parts we manufactured, and generally the way that process works, somewhat different for all companies, but generally the way it works with ZamaTree is the parts are inspected in ZamaTree's QC lab. Once they've passed our internal QC, then we schedule for a customer representative to come out and basically recomplete and oversee the inspection of the parts as well. So that's another thing that that can be selected. Generally, what we run into with source inspection is that we really need to collaborate in terms of lead times, because source inspection actual delivery dates can depend a lot on the availability of a customer representative to come to our facility to inspect the parts. So I would really recommend, if you do have source inspection requirements, tag in your account representative from ZamaTree so they can tag in somebody from the operations team, and we can just make sure that all of your requirements are met. That's kind of especially important, and I would say this actually applies to all of the different inspection options on the ZamaTree site. If you have a part that has a feature that you might think is very difficult to inspect, or maybe a very, very large thread diameter or a custom thread, anything that we might need to order custom inspection tooling for, like custom thread gauges or custom CMM probes, it's in the best interest of everybody for you to bring a human into the loop to oversee that, just so we can make sure that we have the right tools for you. It's very painful if we go through the process of manufacturing a great part for you, and then maybe there's a feature that we can't fully inspect. So that's the type of thing that we like to catch ahead of time during the quote review process.
Yeah, and I really want to mention this. This whole webinar is catered towards aerospace and defense, because we're talking about these very specific, on-site inspection requirements, and that's because aerospace and defense typically is that 1%, manufacturing need, where it is, often, very high value work. It needs to be right, and it needs this custom touch. So, it's usually the opposite on a lot of our webinars. We're talking like the 99% manufacturing, click, go, get a part, and get out the door. And so we're really focusing, again, and putting a lot of weight on these custom results because these were specifically implemented because of our high demand that we get in aerospace and defense manufacturing and these requirements. So we want to make it, we've added these features, even though something like source inspection may not be the most, I hope it's not the most popular thing out there because, again, it's very specific requirements, usually in the aerospace market, but we have it there for our customers to make their side of the procurement very straightforward, very easy, and make it clear and transparent that this is the expectation for the project that you're presenting to us. We do, for all our materials, for all our finishes, for inspection, we do have a custom option. So if you don't see it exactly on the website, even things like a temper material or whatnot, you can always choose custom, and that'll actually put the quote into a request manual review. Same thing happens here on our inspection report custom inspection option. So say, for example, you need something like dye penetrant inspection, or you need a something that's a little bit beyond or kind of in the meta between, is it the material inspection or is it the total quality assurance side of it, and it's not encompassed in these other options. That's when you choose custom. If you have any drawings, notes, any other documentation, if you have your own inspection plan, so say, for example, you have an inspection requirement that's beyond a standard sampling plan, that will be a custom inspection, so we can take a look at it, look at the requirements that you need, and work through that. But just, again, really, I want to put that out that we try to encompass as much, but if not, custom is a place to be. The other thing that I will just touch on very briefly here is how typically someone who's quoting works with procurement here. And I definitely want to move to some Q&A. So we have two really common options. By far the most common is that the engineer, if they don't have direct purchasing rights, is going to click that PDF button on the quote site. Whoa, installing drivers. And that will actually generate a PDF that you can then send to your purchasers. That purchaser can actually go and send that. Whoa. Can you see this? Okay. Give me a second here, guys. I'm getting windowed here. So the PDF will create a nice little PDF that you can send to your purchasers. They could actually send in a PO with this quote, and we take care of the rest. So send it to support@ZamaTree.com. And then the share button itself will go and actually give purchasing rights to your checkout page. So it'll actually allow someone to actually go to your checkout page and purchase on your behalf, which is another way to digitally share that information. Again, support@ZamaTree.com. That's our catch-all email. It'll go to the right person. So putting in a request, we'll make sure it gets to either your representative or the person that can best help you with your needs, whether it's technical support or something about a purchase order or sending in a purchase order. We got you covered there. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern. Mark's out on left coast here, so he's also able to take care of a lot of our Californian customers that we have. And again, we have live chat right on our website. Serena. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to close us out here. Yeah. Don't forget to use the code ZamaTree CNC to get $50 off your next order of $100 or more. This is valid for the next month, so use it anytime between now and then. Let's transition into our Q&A now. Right. We had a couple of questions come in, and please feel free to continue to submit them. So one question we had was regarding our DFARS certification. How does ZamaTree ensure its partners who have access to models and drawings that are covered by the clause on safeguarding covered defense information and cyber incident reporting? How are these partners compliant with this clause? How do we make sure of that? Do you need me to repeat any of that?
Mark, do you want to do this one, or do you want me to get it?
Yeah, I can kick it off. And one of the really important things that I want to emphasize is when you're configuring a quote that has ITAR or other export requirements, to make sure that the ITAR selection is configured on your quote. So that's the number one way to kick off your quote with the right requirements to start with. One thing that we do for aerospace companies is, in general, we can set quote defaults. So for a lot of aerospace companies, if you go and start configuring a quote, your quote is going to be configured to start with ITAR and EAR compliance, DFARS compliant material certs, or in some cases maybe domestic material certs, COCs, and also for some specific customers, we also automatically configure with dimensional inspection reports. So if your company has specific standards that you would like to apply to all your quotes, you can let us know and we can change your defaults. To focus on the DFARS specific requirement, we have very specific terminology that our Chief Information Security Officer shared with us. I can share with whoever the specific question asker was after this this webinar as well, but we are compliant with all the DFARS regulations for our cloud storage. We use GovCloud, which is a very secure cloud platform, and all of the work that is ITAR, EAR, or otherwise export controlled, we subcategorize our manufacturing partner network so that only manufacturing partners who have the right certifications and qualifications are eligible to see the work.
Yeah, there's a tiered manufacturing network that we have, including for aerospace, advanced aerospace, and as Mark said, the second that something has that label to it, this label follows that model in perpetuity. So it actually is kind of hard coded within the model there, in the model revision, that it'll stay ITAR. So if you generate a new quote, that model will automatically be designated ITAR and go through the appropriate channels as well. We take it seriously.
Yeah, you'll even see things like if you select ITAR on your quote, then on things like the packing slips associated with an order, or even the PDF associated with an order, all of a sudden, generally those quotes have thumbnails of the parts. When you configure your quote as ITAR required, the thumbnails are redacted, so it's just kind of a placeholder image, and that accompanies basically all documentation that could, in theory, be on the outside of a package that we ship to you as a customer. So yeah, we do take it very seriously, and kind of in each step along the way, we make sure that we're compliant with all the regulations.
Thank you for those answers. And before we move on to more questions, I just want to remind everyone that you will be getting a copy of this recording. So if you need to review anything, you'll get that straight to your email. So look out for that.
Yeah, and I want to say, because I know I talk too much, if there's any questions that you have, and if we don't get to them, we're going to get to any questions that you ask after the webinar as well. So if you are getting questions as we're explaining this, please keep on inputting them. We'll make sure to get back to you as well. So let's do a couple more though.
Yeah.
And
sure.
And our emails are right there as well. So feel free to email us.
Yeah.
Email Greg. I'm just kidding.
So another question here. Can you upload assembly files to the ZamaTree quoting site, and how do you specify an assembly?
Yeah. So assembly files actually are not directly uploadable to ZamaTree site. What we recommend from the self-serve aspect is to upload the discrete mechanical components. Something to note that, and I see this a lot in sheet metal in particular, is the CAD that you're uploading should be that mechanical component, and if it has something like inserts in it, those actually could just be under a drop down for inserts, and just select how many inserts you have and attach a drawing, because that file is technically assembly if you have those inserts embedded into that part file. And if you save it out as a part, it kind of goes wonky on how it estimates that feature, because it may try to think about doing thread milling or something weird there. But just understand, parse it out into those discrete part files. Make sure that you get in touch with one of our team members, usually your direct account representative, say this is an assembly, and we'll take it and do a custom quote, probably add a line item placeholder for that assembly operation. And it also helps us manage the supply chain on our side to make sure it gets kitted and back so we can assemble it and send you that assembled component.
Great. Another question here. What happens if we need an RMA or find a non-conformance?
Yeah. Mark, actually, I'll let you take that from the ops side.
Sure. Yeah, I can take that. So if you have, I mean, obviously, the first step is that we never want to ship non-conforming parts, but in low volume, high mix custom manufacturing, unfortunately, sometimes it happens. The really important thing is in those cases, ZamaTree takes full responsibility for the RMA. So if you notify us of an RMA, we will open up an RMA case on ZamaTree's end. We will have the parts, we'll provide you with a shipping label to return the parts back to ZamaTree. And then, it's really on a case-by-case basis how that proceeds. In some cases, sometimes we can rework the parts to an acceptable condition. That's generally the quickest solution. So we'll try to rework the parts, put them through a repeat final inspection, and ship them out to you. If the parts need to be remade, then we'll coordinate the remanufacture of the parts. And basically, the whole step along the way, you're going to be communicating with what we call case managers at ZamaTree. And the case manager is going to work with you to come up with the best solution given the context. If you have very, very tight deadlines and you need the part to be reworked to an acceptable condition, we'll put that plan into place. If you have a longer timeline and you can accept full remakes, we'll go with that route. So it's obviously RMA or remakes are never an ideal situation, but we try to be as flexible as possible to meet your requirements as well.
Yeah, and I know this may be actually our last question, but just something really important to point out. I think it's really important. But what Mark said is, it's in manufacturing, and there are, I think I've heard this statement before, where you don't define a manufacturer from when things go right. You define them from when things go wrong. And the way that we respond and the customer service that we offer is absolutely stellar. I always joke that our service, we don't think about ourselves as another machine shop. We think about ourselves as like a hotel front desk with a level of service that we try to offer to you, and the speed at which we work to respond and get any issue resolved. And I think that's really where it comes in and where we build relationships with our aerospace and defense customers, is showing that we're here when it's sunny, and we're here when it's raining too, and we're here to help on that matter.
And we're just after 3 here. We'll do one more question.
All right.
Can you work with an approved supplier list for finishing?
Do you want me to take this one, Greg?
Yeah, the short answer is yeah, but Mark, you can go into more detail, sure.
Yeah. The short answer is yes. And basically, we run into this with several of our different aerospace manufacturing companies. Sometimes it's as simple as requesting that we use NADCAP accredited suppliers. So you don't necessarily have an approved supplier list, but you have specific requirements for the accreditation of your finishing vendors. That's no problem. The only thing that we ask in those type of situations is, in general, let us manually review the quote for you, because in those type of situations, generally the NADCAP accredited suppliers or suppliers on a particular company's approved supplier list, they unfortunately frequently have longer lead times for finishing services, or we might not have an established relationship with them. So it's in the best interest of everybody for you to allow us to maybe RFQ the particular finish you're looking for with that vendor ahead of time. Make sure that the lead time that we're putting on your quote is accurate, and just make sure everybody's requirements are met. But we can definitely work with approved supplier lists. I would just caution to in those type of situations, if you do need ZamaTree to work through an approved supplier list, don't rely on just the auto quoting site. Give us a chance to review the quote for you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that concludes our webinar. Again, please reach out to Greg or Mark. Their emails are on the screen there if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you guys so much for attending, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Yeah. And thanks again, Serena, for having and hosting this webinar. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining me all the way on your left coast. I'm not jealous, guys. I'm a little jealous, but yeah.
I was gonna say, when you said rain or shine earlier, it doesn't rain.
You're like, I don't know what that means anymore. But yeah, thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks.